Realty Brokers, this is Timothy King with Realty Brokers of Arkansas. Want to talk to you guys about the seller property disclosure. Copyright 2022, so the year 2022, the seller property disclosure. There's a lot of changes here. So let's just get to it. For your customer, now your client must be filled out by the seller and therefore cannot be completed by an agent or the broker in form simplicity. However, this form can be filled out electronically by the seller in an e-sign session. So, there's been an e-sign template formed. It's really kind of good to carry several of these in your car all the time. And when you go on a listing appointment, just to pull one out, hand them a pen and sit there and wait on them to kind of go down and start filling out all these things. Here's the instructions to the seller. So sometimes sit down and read through every word and every bit of this. The seller acknowledges and has read, reviewed, and understands the above instructions, and it's submitted by the name and signature and date of the sellers, husband and wife, or brother, sister, whatever. Page 2. To be completed by the seller, please print. So there's the names of the sellers, and this seller is or is not occupying the property, or the property is or is not a builder-owned property. If the seller is occupying or occupied the property, give the length in years. So a lot of times we'll have young people, or we'll have children who haven't lived in the home for maybe never, because their parents moved after they left the house, or they hadn't lived in the house for 40 years because their parents have lived that long, so they really don't know about the house in any recent time. Heated and cooled square footage, please measure the house. Property and tax records are not always accurate. So yes, go on the outside walls and measure the house. Be sure to reduce things like a garage or a utility room that is not heated and cooled. An approximate year of the construction. Lead-based paint disclosures should be on file if the property was constructed prior to 1978. So there's a lead-based paint disclosure also to fill out. And so here is where you just start going down and filling out what they know about the property. There may or may not need to fill out all these items. Like if you're in the city, you may have natural gas, so you would check this box. You may not have a propane tank, so you would just leave this blank. So the things that don't apply, either write N/A or leave it blank. Just leave it blank. And but check and provide all the things that do apply. This next section, talking about the taxes that currently are in place. If it's an older person over 65, go ahead and fill in this information. It doesn't matter. This is what's going on right now. And when it sells, I'll give you a little clue. When the property sells for, mom and dad bought it for $50,000 and now it's going to sell for $280,000, even in need repair condition, the taxes are going to change with the buyer, the new owner, because of a new sale amount. So, but anyway, fill in the tax information, what currently is going on. Is there a property owners association? If so, how often is it collected? Frequency, annual, biannual, monthly, how much per year? Be sure you get it right, because people get upset when you don't put it down right. I had recently, last year or so, had a guy with tons of money, built almost a 10,000 square foot house, but he was ready to go to battle over me for about $150. Because I had, the POA had gone up $150, and I didn't reflect that in this amount. And so he's ready to go to court, ready to fight. Boy, he's ready to fight about it. over about 150 bucks. Never mind that, you know, how much money or what he was doing. I mean, gigantic house in place. But nevertheless, people will fight over even pennies compared to the ratio of things. POA is the first right of refusal option. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Some POAs have the first right to buy a property, especially acreage in a subdivision. The POA dues covered by an association fee. Shoreline structures, is there a permitting agency, such as Heber Springs at Greer's Ferry Lake or Lake Hamilton down in Hot Springs. The permitting agency in Hot Springs on Lake Hamilton would be Entergy right here, Entergy Corporation. And your boat dock and has a serial number and all those things, and that would be all filled in right there. The next thing, so you fill in whether or what. Now you read each one of these, and a lot of times I sit there while the seller fills this out, and I read these to them to help them understand. Kind of speeds things up, and then when I leave after a listing appointment, I've got this in my hand. It sure beats waiting a week to get your hands back on this. Does the seller hold a real estate license? Yes, no, maybe. To your knowledge, does any person owning an interest, you know, any ownership in the property, hold a real estate license? So is there a brother, sister, or somebody? And you read each question and go down through here, and they will fill out this piece of paper. Again, I always have 2 copies so I can read the question to them, and while they sit there and kind of check and fill in the information. It helps them kind of understand what's going on. But they fill it in. You go on down and all the way down through here, and some of these they may not know the question, the answer I mean, and so they would fill in yes, no, unknown, or not applicable. Just doesn't apply. Now if the answers to any of these questions is a yes, here is the part where you would fill in. So you would put like number 49, you would put 49 dash, and you would do the answer. Is there audio or video surveillance in or around the property? You would do 49 dash security cameras outside the house. You know, something like that. Or you would go like 45. Has there been a waste disposal? 45. So you would fill that in and write in the answers there. So the next section is concerning the property referenced. To your knowledge, are there any lead-based paint? So here's more information about lead-based paint. Has there ever been any water intrusion? Any floods? You know, maybe the roof leaking, maybe the roof fell in, maybe water came from the outside on the ground level and flooded in. Anyway, has there ever been any water intrusion, you know, in any way? Has there ever been any presence of mold? You know, yes, no, unknown. Now, if it smells like mold and they're saying no, and you can smell the mold, you might want to challenge them on a few of these things. You know, well, it sure smells like mold, and I see mold around the bathroom tub. You know, has there been any presence of mold? Just, you know, it does matter. And as a real estate agent, you must maybe coach them to make sure they answer these questions honestly and correctly. Don't let them just lie on this and knowingly, because that's not legal. So that kind of finishes what we're used to right there. And they signed. Now the new section is another interaction. The buyer then, they are going to go down, read all of this information, and they're going to sign the buyer's receipt of this information. Now here's an interesting part. On page 13, section 4, look at this. To be updated by the seller. Now, so here's another update. Within 3 business days of accepted real estate contract and signed and dated by all parties to this transaction. So within 3 business days of an accepted contract, the buyer signs up here. It's best to get that signed at the time of contract now. And then guess what? Down here, soon as the contract gets signed and everything, you need to shoot this off, send this off to the seller again to be signed and dated of any updates. So the seller has reviewed all previously answered questions above and acknowledged there are no changes, or yes, there's been some changes. Maybe something has happened. Sometimes when houses are on the market for a longer period of time, there can be changes. And then they sign and date. And then again, it's received then, signed and date by the buyer. And then page 14, to be updated by the seller within 3 business days prior to closing. So here we go again. 3 days before closing, signed and dated. Sellers reviewed, answer all questions above, acknowledge there are no changes or changes. Well, let me give you a clue. If there's been any repairs made, then here you would note it here. You would note that there are repairs, and you can also attach additional sheets, labeling them, Exhibit A, Exhibit B, or Section 5 of 5 Exhibit A to the seller property disclosure, and you could have additional sheets if it's a long list. So changes, repairs to the home needs to be referenced here by the seller. And then signed by the seller, signed by the buyer. Well, there's the seller property disclosure. So guess what? You've got this interaction. You've got this interaction. You've got this interaction by the buyer and this interaction by the seller. So the buyer and the seller are going to sign 3 times on the new seller property disclosure.